The myths of flesh and bone. The command center of Outpost Terex 9 hummed with activity as Lieutenant Kabzor entered, his six-limbed form moving with practiced precision through the crowded space. The crystalline implants embedded in his azure exoskeleton pulsed with data streams, updating him on the latest tactical movements of the human resistance forces. For 3 orbital cycles, the Mariax Empire had waged war against the inhabitants of Sol 3, Earth, as the humans called it, and victory seemed inevitable. "Lieutenant, your presence is required at the tactical briefing," chirped an aide, a smaller member of the Mariax species whose carapace had not yet developed the hardened ridges of a seasoned warrior. Kabzor acknowledged with a subtle vibration of his sensory antennae and made his way to the briefing chamber. Inside, Commander Lishara stood before a 3-dimensional projection of the surrounding star system, her imposing figure casting long shadows across the tactical display. Her exoskeleton bore the ceremonial scarification of 20 successful campaigns, making the absence of human conflict marks conspicuous. "Our offensive against the human colony on Proxima Centauri Beta continues according to projections," Lishara announced, her voice modulator producing the precise harmonic frequencies that denoted authority in Mariax communication. "Their defenses are crumbling under our technological superiority. Behavioral analysis suggests their surrender within 2 standard cycles." A low, resonant hum of approval spread through the gathered officers. The Mariax Empire had conquered 12 sentient species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Humans were just the latest in their path. "Their orbital platforms have been neutralized," continued the commander, manipulating the holographic display to highlight a series of destroyed space stations. "And ground resistance is fragmented and disorganized." Lieutenant Kabzor studied the tactical map with his compound eyes, processing multiple data points simultaneously. Something didn't align with the confidence in the commander's assessment. "With respect, Commander," he ventured, "casualty reports indicate higher than expected losses in ground engagements." Lishara's antennae stiffened, a sign of irritation in their species, an anomaly in the data. Humans are fragile creatures with minimal natural defenses. Their endoskeletal structure shatters under minimal pressure, and their soft tissues offer no protection against our weapons. From the back of the chamber came a sound like head scraping against metal, the Mariax equivalent of derisive laughter. All eyes turned to the source. Sergeant Drelk, a veteran whose damaged exoskeleton told the story of brutal combat. 3 of his 6 limbs had been replaced with biomechanical prosthetics, and a jagged crack ran across his facial carapace. "Something to contribute, Sergeant?" Commander Lishara's voice carried a dangerous edge. Drelk straightened, his prosthetic limbs whirring. "The tactical assessment omits critical information about human combat capabilities, Commander." A tense silence filled the chamber. Challenging a superior's assessment was rare among the hierarchical Mariax. "You based this on your limited engagement on Sol 3. Lishara's tone was dismissive. "I based this on being the sole survivor of Assault Unit Krell 7. Drelk responded, his voice modulator emitting frequencies that registered as absolute certainty. 30 elite warriors against 7 humans. I alone returned." Murmurs spread through the assembled officers. Kabzor felt his curiosity sensors activate. The official report had attributed the Krell 7 disaster to environmental factors, not enemy action. "Your unit was caught in a methane explosion," Commander Lishara stated flatly. "An unfortunate accident." "The explosion was deliberate," Drelk countered. "And it came after the humans had already eliminated half our unit through conventional means." Commander Lishara's exoskeleton plates shifted to a more aggressive posture. "This briefing is concluded. Return to your stations and prepare for the final offensive." Her gaze fixed on Kabzor. "Lieutenant, oversee ammunition distribution to the forward units." As the officers dispersed, Kabzor found himself drawn to Sergeant Drelk. The veteran moved with difficulty toward the nutrient dispensary, his prosthetic limbs lacking the fluid grace of natural appendages. "Sergeant," Kabzor began, falling into step beside the scared warrior. Your assessment of human capabilities differs significantly from command intelligence. Drulk's compound eyes shifted to study the lieutenant. Command has never watched a human continue fighting with half its body destroyed. I have. Kabzor felt his secondary heart accelerate slightly. Surely that's an exaggeration. Their physiology. Their physiology is not their strength. Drulk interrupted. Meet me in the memorial chamber after final signal. I'll tell you what the tactical briefings won't. Hours later, Kabzor found the sergeant staring at the wall of remembrance, where thousands of crystalline shards represented fallen Myriax warriors. One section, newer than the rest, held hundreds of shards from the Earth campaign alone. We lost more in the first engagement with humans than in the entire Arcturus conquest, Drulk said without turning. Yet our propaganda calls them soft and weak. Why would command underplay their capabilities? Kabzor asked, genuinely confused. The Myriax valued accurate intelligence above all. Drulk's damaged mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement, because the truth is more disturbing than tactical disadvantage. It challenges our understanding of what constitutes strength. The sergeant activated a small holoprojector, displaying imagery that made Kabzor's sensory receptors pulse with disbelief. The recording showed a human soldier, already missing one limb, charging a Myriax position while carrying an explosive device. This human knew the charge would kill them, Drulk explained. They sacrificed themselves to eliminate our forward command post. We lost 17 officers. Kabzor's analytical mind struggled with the concept. Self-termination as a tactical choice. More than that, Drulk said. Humans possess something we haven't encountered before. They call it will. When their bodies should fail, this will sustains them. The sergeant switched to another recording, this one from his own optical implants during the Krell 7 disaster. It showed a female human, small even by their species standards, continuing to advance despite wounds that should have been instantly fatal. Their bodies produce chemicals, adrenaline, endorphins, that temporarily override their physical limitations. Drulk continued. Under sufficient stress, humans enter a state they call hysterical strength. Their muscles can exceed their structural limits. Kabzor watched in fascinated horror as the wounded human in the recording eliminated 3 Myriax warriors before finally collapsing. Then there's their cognitive adaptation, Drulk said, his voice dropping to lower frequencies. While our minds shut down from trauma to protect our consciousness, human brains can compartmentalize. They continue functioning, even problem-solving, while experiencing physical agony that would render our neural networks useless. A young Myriax aide rushed into the memorial chamber, his carapace shifting to alarm coloration. Lieutenant, Sergeant, emergency gathering ordered. Human forces have been detected approaching the outpost. Drulk's damaged face betrayed no surprise. How many? Sensors indicate fewer than 30, the aide replied. Drulk exchanged a look with Kabzor. And our garrison numbers? 217 combat-ready personnel, the aide said with confidence. Insufficient, Drulk stated flatly. Surely you jest, Sergeant, Kabzor protested. Our numerical advantage means nothing, Drulk interrupted, moving toward the armory with surprising speed for one so damaged. The humans wouldn't attack without a plan. They lack our numbers but compensate with something far more dangerous. What could be more dangerous than superior firepower in numbers? Kabzor asked, following quickly. Drulk paused, his compound eyes fixing on the lieutenant with unsettling intensity. Desperation, Lieutenant. Humans are most lethal when they have nothing left to lose. And if they're attacking this outpost directly, they're already past that point. The outpost's alarm system activated, bathing the corridors in pulsing red light as Kabzor and Drulk rushed to join the defense. The lieutenant's mind raced with the surgeon's warnings, wondering if the approaching humans truly warranted such fear, or if Drulk's traumatic experience had compromised his tactical assessment. As they reached the command center, explosions rocked the outpost's outer perimeter. Commander Lashera stood before the tactical display, her exoskeleton now bearing full combat enhancements. 26 humans have breached the outer defenses, she announced. All warriors to defensive positions. This pathetic attack will be crushed, and we will take prisoners for interrogation. Sergeant Drelk stepped forward. Commander, request permission to implement protocol severing. Lashera's antennae vibrated with surprise. Protocol severing. That's an extinction-level response. For 26 humans. They're not just attacking, Commander, Drelk insisted. They're sacrificing themselves to achieve a greater objective. We must assume maximum threat. Another explosion, closer this time, shook the command center. The tactical display flickered, showing multiple breaches in the outpost's security perimeter. How are they advancing so quickly? Lashera demanded of her intelligence officer. Unknown, Commander, came the reply. They appear to be using minimal cover and sustaining casualties, but their advance is unhindered. Drelk turned to Kavzor. They're not trying to survive. They're trying to accomplish their mission at any cost. A final devastating explosion breached the command center itself. Through the smoke and debris stepped a human figure, smaller than a Myriax warrior, but moving with deadly purpose. Behind her came others, their soft bodies protected only by primitive armor, their faces set in expressions Kavzor couldn't interpret. Myriax command. The lead human called out in a voice transmitted through a universal translator. I am Captain Alina Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. Your outpost now belongs to humanity. As Myriax warriors raised weapons, Captain Reyes held up a small device. This transmitter is linked to explosives placed throughout your facility. They detonate when my heart stops. Your choice is simple. Surrender or die with us. Kavzor looked at Sergeant Drelk, whose damaged face showed no surprise, only grim validation of everything he had tried to warn them about. The humans had indeed proved more dangerous than anyone except Drelk had anticipated, and the battle for Outpost Terex 9 was just beginning. The reckoning. The command center fell into uneasy silence as the human soldiers established a perimeter, their weapons trained on the Myriax officers. Captain Alina Reyes maintained her position at the center, the detonator clutched firmly in one hand, a plasma rifle in the other. Her combat armor bore scorch marks and impact damage, evidence of the firefight they had pushed through to reach this point. Commander Lashera's exoskeleton shifted to its most imposing configuration as she stepped forward. Your suicidal gambit is noted, human. But what do you hope to accomplish? The Myriax Empire controls 17 star systems. The loss of this outpost means nothing. Captain Reyes' expression remained impassive. This isn't about the outpost, Commander. It's about the data your scientists have been collecting. Kavzor felt a ripple of unease through his sensory receptors. The classified research wing of Terex 9 had been operating under highest security protocols. How could the humans know about it? You have violated 67 established conventions of warfare, Lashera continued, ignoring the human statement. Threatening mass casualties of military personnel during an active surrender negotiation. Save the lecture on interstellar law, Reyes interrupted. Your empire lost that moral high ground when you started experimenting on human prisoners. The accusation hung in the air. Kavzor glanced at Sergeant Drelk, whose damaged facial plates betrayed no surprise. You knew. Kavzor transmitted on a private frequency. I suspected, Drelk responded. The requisition orders for medical supplies to this outpost exceeded combat casualty projections by 300%. Another human stepped forward, a male with dark skin and cybernetic enhancements visible along his temples. Captain, their central database is located 2 levels below. Security protocols are substantial. Proceed as planned, Major Chen, Reyes ordered. Take Dr. Koshiro and 3 soldiers. You have 15 minutes. As the designated humans departed, Reyes turned her attention back to the Myriax command staff. No one needs to die today, Commander. We take your research on human physiology Destroy the samples and leave. Resist, and this outpost becomes a debris field. Commander Lishara's compound eyes narrowed. You would sacrifice your own soldiers for data. Every soldier in this room volunteered. Rise replied coldly. After seeing what you did to our captured comrades, there was no shortage of volunteers. The standoff continued as minutes passed in tense silence. Kabzor observed the human soldiers with new perspective, noting how even their stillness contained potential energy, like compression coils ready to release. Despite their smaller stature and obvious fatigue, they maintained perfect discipline, their eyes constantly scanning, weapons never wavering. Sergeant Drelk moved slowly to Kabzor's side, his damaged prosthetics whirring softly. Watch the female at the eastern entrance, he transmitted privately. Left arm immobilized, probable fracture, yet she maintains her position. Pain suppression through sheer will. Kabzor observed the indicated human soldier. Indeed, her left arm hung awkwardly, and a dark stain, human blood, he realized, had spread across her armor. Yet her weapon remained steady in her right hand, her eyes alert. How can they function like this? Kabzor wondered. Evolution on a death world, Drelk replied. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. Everything that survived became more dangerous. A sudden explosion from below decks rocked the command center. Alarms blared as the outpost's security systems detected the breach of the research level. What have you done? Lishara demanded. Captain Rice remained unmoved. Exactly what we came to do. Your research on human biology ends today. Commander Lishara made a subtle gesture, one Kabzor recognized as the signal for hidden security protocols. From concealed compartments in the command center walls, defensive turrets emerged, targeting systems locking onto the human invaders. Your soldiers in the research level are already dead, Lishara stated, and you will join them. Automated defenses require no living operators. Your deadman switch is meaningless. Reyes smiled, a human expression Kabzor had never seen in person. It contained no mirth, only a predatory determination that sent vibrations of alarm through his sensory receptors. You think we didn't plan for that? She asked quietly. The lights throughout the outpost suddenly failed, plunging the command center into darkness. Emergency systems activated moments later, bathing everything in dim red light. Power core compromised, reported a Myriax technician. Automated systems offline. Kabzor realized the truth with crystal clarity. The humans in the research level weren't the primary mission team. They were a diversion. The real target had been the outpost's power infrastructure all along. In the confusion, the human soldiers moved with practiced precision. 3 Myriax officers fell before they could react, precision shots penetrating the vulnerable joints in their exoskeletons. Commander Lishara raised her ceremonial weapon, firing a concentrated energy burst that vaporized a human soldier instantly. Take cover, Sergeant Drelk shouted, pulling Kabzor behind a command console as plasma fire erupted across the chamber. The battle descended into chaos, Myriax warriors using their superior strength in close quarters, humans exploiting their knowledge of Myriax physiological weaknesses. Kabzor watched in horrified fascination as a human soldier, despite a grievous wound to his torso, continued fighting with impossible determination, taking 2 more Myriax warriors with him before finally collapsing. Just as I warned, Drelk transmitted. Their bodies fail long after their will would allow them to stop. A deafening explosion tore through the far wall of the command center. Through the breach stepped Major Chen and his team, carrying sealed containers, the stolen research data and samples. Captain. Mission accomplished, Chen called out. Charges set in the research wing. 2 minutes to detonation. Captain Rice nodded, still maintaining her position. Begin withdrawal. Take the commander as insurance. Kabzor watched as 2 human soldiers approached Commander Lishara, who stood defiant amid the bodies of her fallen officers. With unexpected speed, she activated a concealed blade in her ceremonial gauntlet, impaling the closest human through the chest. What happened next would forever change Kabzor's understanding of his enemy. The mortally wounded human, blood pouring from his fatal injury, locked his arms around Lashara's torso and triggered an explosive device on his tactical vest. The blast severed two of Lashara's limbs and cracked her primary carapace. As she collapsed to the deck, Kabzor felt Sergeant Drelk pull him toward an emergency exit. "We must withdraw," the sergeant insisted. "The research wing detonation will trigger a cascade failure in the containment systems." "But the commander is beyond our help," Drelk finished grimly, "as is anyone who remains." As they navigated the smoke-filled corridors toward the evacuation pods, they encountered Captain Rice and her remaining soldiers making their own escape. For a moment, human and Mariax forces faced each other in the narrow passageway, weapons raised. Rice assessed the situation with quick efficiency. "Stand aside, and we all might survive." "The research you stole," Kabzor said, finding his voice. "What makes it worth such sacrifice?" Something changed in the human captain's expression, a softening that seemed at odds with her deadly effectiveness moments before. "Your scientists were trying to understand why humans keep fighting past biological failure," she replied. "They tortured hundreds of prisoners looking for the source of our irrational resilience, as your reports called it." "And did they find it?" Drelk asked, his damaged voice modulator conveying genuine curiosity. Reyes' expression hardened again. "No, because they were looking in the wrong place. It's not in our bodies. It's in our minds. In our connections to each other." She gestured to her remaining soldiers. "Every person here came to rescue people they've never met, because they're human. That's what your empire will never understand." Another explosion rocked the outpost, this one larger than the previous blasts. Warning klaxons screamed as the station's automated voice announced containment failure in multiple sectors. "This conversation can continue elsewhere," Drelk stated pragmatically, "if any of us wish to survive." With unspoken agreement, the mixed group proceeded to the evacuation bay, where only 3 functional pods remained. As the humans boarded one pod and Kabzor prepared to enter another, he noticed Sergeant Drelk hesitating. "Sergeant." Drelk's compound eyes fixed on Captain Reyes. "This changes nothing. Our empire will continue its campaign against your worlds." Reyes paused at her pod's entrance. "Actually, it changes everything. By now, the data we've recovered is being transmitted throughout human space. Your military's assessment of our capabilities has been fatally flawed from the beginning. This mission just proved it." "How so?" Kabzor asked. "Your leaders told your soldiers we were weak, easily broken," Reyes replied. "But 26 of us just destroyed a fortified outpost with 200 defenders. The truth will spread through your ranks. The next time you face humans in battle, your warriors will know what they're really facing." With that, she sealed her pod and launched, the small craft accelerating rapidly away from the dying outpost. Kabzor and Drelk followed moments later in separate pods, escaping just as Terex 9 erupted in a spectacular fusion detonation that illuminated the darkness of space. Drifting amidst the debris field that had been Outpost Terex 9, Kabzor opened a communication channel to Sergeant Drelk's pod. "You were right about them," he transmitted. "Everything you said. Their resilience, their willingness to sacrifice. I've witnessed it now." "The real question," Drelk responded after a long pause, "is whether our leaders will acknowledge the truth. Humans aren't simply another species to be conquered. They represent something different." "Different how?" Drelk's damaged face appeared on the communication screen, his compound eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Most species fight for survival, Lieutenant. Humans fight for each other. It's a strength our kind cannot fully comprehend, and therefore cannot effectively counter." As their pods were recovered by a Mariax patrol vessel hours later, Kabzor found himself contemplating the surgeon's words. The Mariax Empire had encountered and conquered many species across the galaxy, cataloging their strengths and weaknesses with scientific precision. But humans seemed to defy such analysis. their greatest strength lying not in physical capability, but in something intangible. In the debriefing that followed, Kabzor reported everything he had witnessed, including Captain Ray's final warning. The High Command dismissed much of it as exaggeration or trauma-induced misperception, but the lieutenant noticed a subtle change in their tactical directives in the days that followed. Human-controlled worlds were approached with greater caution. Prisoner experiments were officially suspended. 3 cycles later, Lieutenant Kabzor, now elevated to captain following the Terex 9 incident, found himself assigned to a diplomatic vessel rather than a warship. Their mission: establish preliminary communication channels with human authorities. As his ship approached the designated neutral meeting point, he received a private transmission from Surgeon Trelk, who had since been reassigned to military intelligence. The humans have agreed to negotiation parameters, the message read. Their representative to the preliminary talks is Captain Alina Reyes. Kabzor felt his secondary heart accelerate at the name. The human who had destroyed Terex 9 would now sit across from him at a negotiation table. Recommended approach? He inquired. Drelk's response was immediate. Respect, Captain. Whatever else humans may be, they understand and respond to genuine respect. Remember what you witnessed. Their strength isn't in their fragile bodies, but in their unbreakable will. We may never fully understand them, but perhaps we don't need to. Perhaps it's enough to recognize them as worthy adversaries and potential allies. As his ship prepared for the historic first diplomatic contact, Kabzor found himself anticipating the meeting with an emotion his species rarely experienced: hope. The humans had shown themselves to be dangerous beyond all expectation, but perhaps that same determination could be channeled toward cooperation rather than conflict. After all, if humans could fight with such dedication, perhaps they could build peace with equal resolve.